Life is an unpredictable journey, full of twists and turns that often catch us off guard. I never imagined that my existence would be completely transformed by an experience as surreal as it was profound. It all began on a seemingly ordinary day, but one that turned out to be the turning point of my life. I saw the fate of jihadists in hell during my NDE, and what I witnessed changed everything. You might think this is just another vision, but what happened showed me an unimaginable reality. Before delving into the details of this extraordinary experience, it's important to reflect on how I was living my life up to that point. I was an ordinary man, with everyday concerns and a faith that, although present, was not the center of my existence. I worked, took care of my family, and occasionally attended religious services, but I never really delved into the spiritual questions that permeate our existence. My life followed a predictable course, without major upheavals or deep questions about the meaning of our earthly journey. Everything changed in a fraction of a second. The accident that led to my near-death experience happened so suddenly that I barely had time to process what was happening. One moment I was driving home after a long day at work. The next, my car was rolling over on the road after being hit by an out-of-control truck. The deafening sound of twisting metal, the shock of the impact, and the sensation of losing control over everything around me blended into a whirlwind of chaos and fear. While my body was trapped in the twisted wreckage of the vehicle, my consciousness seemed to expand beyond physical limits. The intense pain I should have been feeling gave way to a strange feeling of detachment. It was as if I were floating, observing the accident scene from an external point of view. I saw the paramedics arriving, heard sirens in the distance, but everything seemed distant, as if I were watching a movie about my own life. At that moment, I didn't know if I would survive. The reality of my own mortality hit me with overwhelming force. All the plans I had made, all the concerns that seemed so important minutes before, suddenly became insignificant in the face of the real and imminent possibility of death. It was as if a veil had been removed from my eyes, revealing the fragility of our existence and the importance of valuing every moment given to us. While my body lay motionless at the accident site, my consciousness seemed to be drawn to something beyond physical reality. A tunnel of light appeared before me, not as something frightening, but as an irresistible invitation to something greater, something beyond my earthly understanding. It was as if my entire life had been a preparation for this moment, for this passage to a broader and deeper reality. As I approached the light, I began to distinguish figures in the background. They weren't clear shapes, but presences that emanated an intensity impossible to ignore. It was as if someone or something was waiting for me on the other side. The sensation was both comforting and intimidating. Part of me longed for this encounter, while another part hesitated, uncertain about what awaited me. Internal questions began to arise in my mind. Was this the paradise that so many religions promise? The peace and serenity I felt seemed to indicate so. However, there was something more, a sense of alertness, as if I were about to face not just eternity, but also a judgment on how I live my life. A presence made itself felt, calm and welcoming, but at the same time distant and imposing. It wasn't a figure I could see clearly, but an energy that permeated the entire environment around me. I felt small before this presence, as if my entire existence was being evaluated, every choice, every action, every thought. It was then that I realized I was facing a judgment. Not a judgment in the earthly sense with accusations and defenses, but a deep and impartial evaluation of the essence of my being. The sensation was of being completely exposed, without masks or pretensions, before an infinite wisdom that understood not only my actions, but also the motivations behind them. As I tried to assimilate this new reality, something unexpected happened. A door seemed to open before me, but it wasn't a passage to the paradise I had imagined. On the contrary, what I saw through this opening filled me with a sadness and horror that earthly words can hardly describe. Before my eyes, a scene of profound agony unfolded. Souls trapped in a state of torment, not by physical torture, but by the full understanding of the consequences of their earthly actions. Among these tormented souls, I identified faces and expressions that were vaguely familiar from news and reports about religious conflicts. They were people who, in life, had justified violence and hatred in the name of faith. With a shock of recognition, I realized I was looking at the fate of jihadist leaders and religious extremists. Their faces, once full of conviction and holy fury, were now contorted in expressions of regret and horror. It was as if they finally understood the true meaning of their actions and the distortion they had made of the sacred teachings they claimed to follow. The environment surrounding these souls was enveloped in an ethereal flame, not a fire that consumed or destroyed, but a visual manifestation of the inner torment they faced. This flame seemed to symbolize the burning regret and belated understanding of the evil they had caused in the name of misinterpreted beliefs. Voices of supplication echoed around me, cries for forgiveness and understanding. But the most impressive thing was the silence that permeated this judgment. There were no verbal condemnations or externally imposed punishments. The true torment came from within each soul, from the full awareness of their actions and the lives they had negatively affected. My heart was heavy as I realized the reality of divine justice before me. It wasn't a vengeful or cruel justice, as often portrayed in human interpretations, but a justice based on inescapable truth and full understanding of the consequences of our choices. It was a justice that didn't punish, but allowed each soul to face the truth about itself. As I observed this surreal scene, a figure materialized beside me. It was a being that emanated wisdom and kindness, but also incredible strength and severity. Its presence was both comforting and intimidating, as if it personified the perfect balance between mercy and justice. This wise being began to explain to me the concept of spiritual responsibility and true faith. Its words, though not spoken in any language I knew, resonated directly in my soul. It spoke about how every choice we make, every intention we nurture, has repercussions that go far beyond our earthly understanding. I then witnessed how each soul was confronted with its choices. It wasn't an external judgment, but a process of deep and inescapable self-reflection. I saw how the intentions behind actions were as important as the actions themselves. Those who had acted out of ignorance or fear faced a different kind of confrontation compared to those who had deliberately chosen the path of hatred and violence. Those who had abused religious power, using faith as a tool for manipulation and control, had a denser and darker aura around them. It was as if the weight of their actions and the distortion of sacred truths had created a barrier between them and the light of divine understanding. However, even for these, there was a sense that redemption, though difficult, was not impossible. As I observed this process, my mind began to expand, comprehending concepts that before seemed beyond my capacity to understand. I began to realize that true spirituality and divine justice were much deeper and more complex concepts than any earthly doctrine could capture. A question began to echo in my mind, a question that seemed to contain the essence of everything I was witnessing. What if true faith is, in fact, compassion? The wise figure, perceiving my internal questioning, led me to an even deeper understanding of love and faith. It showed me scenes of acts of kindness and mercy being valued in the spiritual plane. I saw how small gestures of compassion, often ignored or undervalued on earth, shone with an intense light in this spiritual realm. I then understood that the experience I was having was not one of condemnation, but of reflection and awareness of choices. The wise being revealed to me that true faith lies in spiritual healing, not in extreme acts or external demonstrations of devotion. I saw how those who had dedicated their lives to helping others, often silently and without recognition, emanated a special light, an aura of peace and fulfillment. I witnessed a kind of light emanating from those who had lived by compassion. This light wasn't something external, but seemed to come from within each soul, like a visible manifestation of the kindness and love they had cultivated in life. It was a stark contrast to the darkness that enveloped those who had chosen the path of hatred and intolerance. As I observed these scenes, I realized that divine justice was balanced in a way that went beyond my previous understanding. Innocence and genuine pursuit of good seemed to weigh as much, if not more, than strict adherence to rules and doctrines. I saw souls that, though imperfect and flawed, were welcomed with love because they had sincerely strived to do good and grow spiritually. My beliefs began to transform before my eyes. Everything I thought I knew about divine judgment, about heaven and hell, about good and evil, was being challenged and reconfigured. I began to question not only my own convictions, but also the religious interpretations I had accepted without questioning throughout my life. The wise being then took me to a vision where I could witness lives that had been changed by acts of compassion. I saw people who had been saved from the darkness of hatred and extremism by simple gestures of love and understanding. These souls shone intensely, not because they were perfect, but because they had chosen the path of transformation and spiritual growth. The figure told me, with a voice that seemed to resonate in every fiber of my being, that anyone can achieve this peace, but it requires a conscious and constant choice. He showed me how every decision we make, every thought we nurture, brings us closer to or further from this state of spiritual harmony. The contrast between the weight of the jihadist choices and the relief of those who had sought peace was impressive. I saw how the souls of extremists carried an immense burden, not imposed by an external judge, but by the full understanding of the evil they had caused and the opportunities for love and compassion they had wasted. On the other hand, those who had chosen the path of peace, even in the midst of conflicts and adversities, seemed light and radiant. It was at this moment that I deeply understood that spiritual healing is the way to avoid eternal suffering. It wasn't about following rigid rules or practicing empty rituals, but a continuous process of self-reflection, growth, and genuine love for others. I saw how this healing could transform even the most tormented souls, offering a chance for redemption and peace. As I absorbed these revelations, I felt my own soul begin to reconcile with my past acts and decisions. It was as if every choice I had made in life was being revisited, not with judgment, but with a deeper understanding of their implications and consequences. I felt a mix of regret for lost opportunities and gratitude for the times I had chosen the path of love and compassion, even if unconsciously. The wise figure then taught me something that would forever change my perspective on faith and spirituality. He showed me that religious innocence, often mistaken for naivety or weakness in the earthly world, is actually a powerful force in the spiritual realm. The ability to maintain purity of heart, to believe in good even in the face of evil, to choose love instead of hate, is one of the greatest strengths a soul can possess. As I absorbed these lessons, I felt renewed, as if I were receiving a new mission. It wasn't a call to preach or convert, but an invitation to live in a way that reflected the deepest truths I had witnessed. It was a call to be an agent of compassion and understanding in a world often dominated by fear and intolerance. As this understanding solidified in my being, the environment around me began to change. The darkness and sense of judgment that had permeated my initial experience began to fade. It was as if, having witnessed and understood these profound truths, I was ready to return to the world of the living. The wise figure approached me one last time. With a whisper that seemed to echo through all dimensions of existence, he told me that my mission on Earth was not yet finished. I felt a mixture of relief and responsibility upon hearing these words. Relief in knowing that I would have the chance to apply what I had learned, and responsibility for the weight of knowledge I now carried. With a sense of urgency to implement changes in my life, I began to wake up from the near-death state. The transition back to physical consciousness was gradual, as if my spirit was reluctant to leave that realm of understanding and wisdom. Gradually, the sounds of the material world began to penetrate my consciousness. The constant beep of heart monitors, the low murmur of concerned voices, the soft sound of footsteps in the hospital corridor. I opened my eyes slowly, blinking against the fluorescent light of the hospital room. I found worried family members around me, their faces a mixture of relief and apprehension. Despite the physical pain that was beginning to make itself felt, an inexplicable peace enveloped me. It was as if I carried within me a piece of that light I had witnessed on the other plane. My first attempt to speak was weak, my voice hoarse from intubation. But the urgency to share what I had experienced was greater than any physical discomfort. I began to tell about my experience, about what I had seen and learned. The words flowed from me like a dammed river that finally finds an outlet. As I spoke, I noticed the looks exchanged between my family members and the medical team. They were looks of doubt, of disbelief, sometimes even of concern. I could see in their eyes that they attributed my words to the trauma of the accident, to some kind of drug-induced hallucination. But this didn't discourage me. I knew, with a certainty that transcended any earthly logic, that what I had experienced was real and deeply meaningful. In the days that followed, as my body slowly recovered, my mind and spirit were in constant activity. A new purpose was growing in me, a calling that could not be ignored. I knew that my life from then on would have to be a testimony to this extraordinary experience and the urgent need for spiritual healing in our world. As I grew stronger physically, I began to share my story with more people, nurses, doctors, other patients. Some reacted with skepticism, others with fascination. But what surprised me was how, even those who expressed doubts, seemed touched by something in my account. It was as if, on some deep level, they recognized the truth of what I was saying. When I was finally discharged from the hospital, I returned home with a clear mission: to dedicate myself to guiding others who were seeking spiritual answers and questioning their faith. It wasn't about converting people to a new religion or doctrine, but about helping them find the path of compassion and true love that I had witnessed on the other side. My community, however, was divided in the face of my new vision of life. Some welcomed me with open arms, fascinated by my experience and eager to learn more. Others, especially those more attached to traditional and rigid interpretations of faith, looked at my new ideas with suspicion. There were times when I felt isolated, misunderstood, as if I were walking a tightrope between two worlds. But as I continued to share my story and the lessons I had learned, I began to find other people who resonated with my message. They were individuals from different backgrounds and beliefs, united by the common desire for a deeper and more authentic spirituality. Slowly, a small support network began to form around me, people who sought the same purpose of love and understanding. Over time, this network grew and strengthened. We decided to found a spiritual support center, a place where true faith could be discussed with compassion and openness. It wasn't a temple in the traditional sense, but a space for dialogue, reflection, and healing. In this center, people of all beliefs or no belief at all were welcome to explore deep questions about the meaning of life, the nature of love, and the path to inner peace. In my daily work at this center, the wise figure I had encountered during my near-death experience became my constant inspiration. His words and teachings echoed in my mind, always reminding me to choose love above all. In moments of doubt or challenge, I connected with that presence of wisdom, seeking guidance and strength. As our community grew, we began to see real changes in people's lives. Individuals who were previously trapped in cycles of hatred and intolerance found a new path of understanding and forgiveness. Families divided by religious differences reconciled. Young people who flirted with extremist ideas discovered an alternative of peace and purpose. One of the most rewarding experiences was seeing how the community around us began to understand that faith can be a force for unity and healing, not division. Slowly, the barriers between different religious and cultural groups began to dissolve. People who once saw each other as enemies began to recognize themselves as brothers and sisters on a shared spiritual journey. As the years passed, I found a peace and purpose I had never known before. The memory of my near-death experience remained vivid, serving as a beacon that guided my actions and decisions. I knew that my mission was to spread the message of love and understanding I had received, not through preaching or dogmas, but through concrete actions and examples. The impact of our work began to extend beyond our local community. People from different parts of the country and even the world began to seek us out, looking for guidance and inspiration. We received invitations to share our approach at conferences, universities, and even in international forums dedicated to peace and interreligious understanding. One of the most powerful experiences was when we had the opportunity to work with former extremists and their victims. Seeing the healing and reconciliation process that occurred when these people met face to face, sharing their stories and pains, was living proof of the transformative power of compassion and forgiveness that I had witnessed on the other side. As our influence grew, we also faced challenges and criticisms. There were those who accused us of diluting religious traditions, of promoting a dangerous syncretism. Others saw us as a threat to the status quo, fearing that our ideas could destabilize established power structures. We faced these challenges with the same compassion and openness that we preached, seeing each criticism as an opportunity for dialogue and mutual growth. One of the most important lessons I learned and shared throughout this journey was the importance of balance between personal faith and respect for the diversity of beliefs. I taught that it is possible to maintain deep convictions without demonizing or belittling the beliefs of others. This approach opened doors for constructive dialogues between groups that previously seemed irreconcilable. As time passed, I began to see the fruits of our work manifest in unexpected ways. Children who had grown up in our community became adults committed to peace and mutual understanding. Community leaders and local politicians began to incorporate principles of compassion and inclusion into their policies and decisions. Small acts of kindness and understanding multiplied, creating waves of positive change that extended far beyond our immediate circle. Reflecting on my journey, from that fateful moment of the accident to the present, I feel a deep gratitude for the opportunity to have experienced that near-death experience and to be able to share its lessons with the world. Each life touched, each conflict resolved, each heart open to understanding and love is a confirmation of the truth I discovered on that other plane. Today, years after that transformative event, I continue my work with the same passion and dedication as on the first day. The memory of my experience remains vivid, a constant source of inspiration and guidance. I know that my mission is far from over. As long as there are hearts closed by fear and minds obscured by prejudice, there will be work to be done. Looking to the future, I see a world of possibilities. A world where faith is not a source of division, but a path to unity. A world where compassion overcomes hatred, where understanding triumphs over ignorance. It's an ambitious dream, perhaps, but a dream worth pursuing. My experience has taught me that each of us has the power to make a difference. Each act of kindness, each word of understanding, each gesture of forgiveness is a light that illuminates the darkness. And it is with this conviction that I continue my journey, inviting others to join me on this path of love and transformation. As I share this story, my hope is that it touches something deep in each person who hears it, that it awakens in them the same understanding that it awakened in me, that in the end, what really matters are not our differences, but our shared humanity. May it inspire each one to look beyond appearances, to seek the divine light that exists in every human being. And so, I conclude my narrative not with an end, but with an invitation for each of us to explore the depths of our own spirituality, to seek truth with open hearts and receptive minds, to cultivate compassion not only in extraordinary moments, but in every daily interaction. For it is thus, through small acts of love and understanding, that we can, step by step, create the world of peace and harmony that I glimpsed in that experience beyond life. A world where the fate of jihadists in hell serves not as a final condemnation, but as a powerful reminder of the transformative power of love and compassion. A world where each of us recognizes our responsibility in creating a brighter and more compassionate future for all humanity.